You break your back working day and night. So, why does the cash in your wallet keep losing value? They told you it was inflation, bad policy, crisis cycles. That's not the whole truth. The real answer is in your hand right now. Inside the phone you're watching this on, inside that chip, hidden in microscopic wires, silver. You don't know it yet, but that shiny metal draining your wallet today is the same flawless killer that hollowed out the 5 most unbeatable empires history has ever seen. This isn't just a mineral. The same silver brought down Rome. The same silver bankrupted Spanish King Philip II 3 separate times. And the same silver left China's last emperor hanging from a tree in his own palace garden. So, who's next? 2 years ago, the American chip industry quietly switched from gold to silver to cut costs. Now, silver has become so expensive that they're scrambling for a new alternative. Just like Roman Emperor Diocletian did in 301 AD, just like Sultan Murad III tried in 1585. Same game, same playbook, third act. In this video, you're going to see exactly how a single metal swallowed entire empires, one bite at a time. And the 5th empire I'll show you, the trap it walked into, is going to feel uncomfortably familiar. Follow the money, it always tells you the truth. In school, they taught you that empires fell because of massive armies, brilliant generals, sword strikes. That's a cliché. When an empire collapses, the sword is just the final act. The first act of every collapse is always opened by money. History books love telling you about the flashy wars and the arrogant kings, but they'll never tell you the real secret. The fate of every one of those unbeatable armies, every one of those proud kings, every one of those bloody wars was tied to a single metal. And the 5 greatest empires in history all became fatally addicted to the same thing, silver. So, how does one shiny mineral rot an entire empire from the inside? And how is America walking straight into the same trap? Right now, 5 empires, 5 collapses, 1 metal. Let's start with the first victim of history's most brutal murder weapon. The year is 1545. In Upper Peru, 4,000 meters above the clouds, they discovered a mountain. Its name was Potosí, and this was no ordinary mountain. From peak to base, it was solid silver, the largest silver deposit ever found. For Spanish King Charles V, drowning in debt up to his neck. This was a gift from heaven. At the time, his moneylenders in Germany and Italy were charging him interest rates as high as 48%. The crown was on life support. When mountains of Potosí silver started landing in the port of Seville, Spain thought all its problems were over. They thought they were about to rule the world. They were dead wrong. That silver never entered Spain's treasury. It came off the ships, passed through Seville, and went straight into the pockets of the same bankers they already owed everything to. The bankers melted it into gold and burned it all in endless unwinnable wars. The result? Total disaster. King Philip II declared bankruptcy 3 separate times. He single-handedly wiped out the biggest banking dynasty of the era, the J.P. Morgan of its day, overnight. But the real nightmare was just getting started. Silver kept flooding from Potosí into Europe for a full century. In Spain, prices multiplied 400 times. Imagine owning the largest silver mine on earth, while a Spanish peasant can't even buy a loaf of bread. The Spanish crown defaulted 6 times. The richest empire in the world, sitting on an endless mountain of silver, went to its knees. You know why? Because wealth isn't about how much money flows to you. Wealth is about how much of it you can actually keep. But Potosí's bloodlust wasn't finished yet. While Spain was crumbling, on the other side of the world, another empire was about to take its first taste of the same shining poison. Istanbul. The year is 1585. The Ottoman Empire had one thing that represented its invincibility, its own silver coin, the Akçe. For 2.5 centuries it was minted from nearly pure silver, the flawless gleam of economic power and stability, until that dark night. Sultan Murad III had just launched a war against the Safavids that would drag on for 30 years. The treasury had run dry, and on that night the palace treasurer stripped 44% of the silver out of the Akçe in a single sitting. They replaced it with cheap copper, because the same Potosí silver that had poisoned Spain had now spilled out of Europe and flooded the Ottoman lands, crushing everything in its path. So what was the price of that little trick? One of the greatest military collapses in history, the backbone of the Ottoman army, was the legendary Timur cavalry, the elite horsemen everyone feared. These fighters bought their own horses, their own armor, their own swords, using the fixed Akçe income they collected from village taxes. But once the Potosí poison ignited inflation and multiplied prices fivefold within a century, those fixed incomes turned into garbage overnight. Picture yourself as the most feared elite soldier in the world, but your money is so worthless you can't even afford a horse. Soldiers refused to march, a crack opened in the empire that would keep widening for 200 years, not from a sword, from inflation. That once shining coin, the white Akçe, named for its silver glow, was now so blackened by copper that people started calling it the Black Akçe. Things got so bad that merchants in the Istanbul bazaars would throw the Sultan's own coin back in his face and demand Venetian ducats or Spanish pesos instead. Who would have imagined that an empire this vast could rot from the inside before losing a single inch of territory? Maybe you're living through that same moment right now. You just don't know it yet. Now take this story and carry it 1600 miles east. Same years, same shortage, born from the same flood of silver, and the next empire on this killer metals hit list. This time, the victim is going to pay for the imperial crown by swinging from a tree branch. Beijing. The year is 1644, April 24th, just before dawn. Ming Emperor Chongzhen stands alone beneath a tree in the forbidden city gardens. The treasury is empty, the army has scattered, the food has run out, the rebel commander is already at the palace gates. In desperation, the emperor pulls a white handkerchief from his sleeve and writes one final note. "I have shamed my people." Then he hangs himself from the tree branch. In that moment, the final image of the Ming Dynasty, the empire that ruled 1 out of every 4 humans alive, is a corpse swinging in a garden. 276 years of dynasty ending in silence. How did it come to this? The Ming had made a catastrophic mistake. They had pegged their entire tax system to silver. But here's the problem. China didn't have its own silver. Every ounce came from Japan, or, and here's the cruel irony, from the colonies of the same Spain that just collapsed in our last chapter. The Ming treasury's life depended on mines 12,000 miles away, and galleons crossing the Pacific. In the 1630s, pirates started raiding the Spanish silver fleets. Japan started restricting its silver exports. The flow of silver into China was cut like a knife. The value of silver in China crashed overnight. The empire's revenues evaporated by 2/3 in seconds. The emperor couldn't pay his soldiers a single coin. The soldiers mutinied. The peasants revolted. Enemies attacked from every side. And that tree in the Forbidden City became the funeral of the world's largest empire. The thing that killed that empire wasn't enemy arrows. The thing that killed that empire was a slowdown in silver production at a mine 12,000 miles away. Now we rewind the clock 1,000 years, because the most shocking part of this story, the part that looks the most like America's situation right now, belongs to the next empire, and the next empire's money looks like gold on the outside, but on the inside it carries the same lethal silver poison. August 26, 1071, the plain of Manzikert. Byzantine Emperor Romanos Diogenes is captured. Anatolia is lost. The imperial treasury is bone dry. In history class, they told you this was the beginning of the end for Byzantium, but they lie to you again. The real war wasn't lost on that battlefield. The real war was lost inside the money. Decades earlier, the secret to Byzantine power wasn't its swords, it was 2 magical coins. The gold solidus, which kept its purity at 99.5% for 700 years straight. The dollar of its day, and the silver milliaresian, which ordinary people used to buy bread, pay rent, and settle their taxes. But in the 1030s, things went sideways. The treasury started running deficits. The emperors reached for the same trick, hollowing out the coin. By the 1080s, that legendary gold coin held only 10% gold. The rest was worthless copper and silver scrap. Imagine trying to buy something in a Constantinopolis market with palace coins. It was treated as an insult. At the same time, Venetian and Genoese merchants poured into the harbors. They sold silk, they sold spices, and in return they refused the fake coins. They demanded the empire's last real gold and silver. While the emperors were minting counterfeit money inside the empire, foreign merchants were smuggling the empire's real wealth out by the shipload. To plug the hole, they debased more. The more they debased, the more public trust died. In 1092, a panicked emperor introduced a new gold coin called the super refined. That move bought Byzantium some time, but it didn't stop the bleeding. Every new crisis hollowed the coin out again, halved its value, again and again. In 1453, you've been told that Sultan Mehmed II's massive army and cannons brought the empire down. The truth is, those cannons were just a funeral procession. Those high walls had already fallen 150 years earlier, the night the emperors first started carving the metal out of their own money, and now we get to the last one. The most famous empire of them all. The other four empires I just showed you followed the exact same fatal pattern. So who invented this devil's blueprint that hollows empires out from the inside? The answer lies in the cold hands of a man dying on his bed in the year 14 AD. 14 AD, Augustus lies on his deathbed. He leaves behind 70 million people across 3 continents, a vast empire, and one thing holding it all together: the denarius, a pure silver coin, 98% fineness. The power of this coin was so absolute that the Roman legionnaire's entire day of bleeding and sweating in armor earned him a single denarius. For half a denarius, you could buy bread for your family. For 4 denarii, you could buy an entire sheep. The Roman Empire wasn't built on the swords of its legions. It was built on the pure trust in this metal. Then came Nero. After the Great Fire of 64 AD, Nero needed urgent money to rebuild the city. He melted down temple gold. It wasn't enough. And one night, in the dark chambers of his palace, he made the decision that would alter the course of history. Let's drop the silver in the denarius from 98% to 90. With the difference, we'll mint more coins. No one will ever notice. And really, nobody noticed. The emperors who came after Nero saw how sweet and effortless this trick was, and they didn't stop. A generation later, Trajan cut it to 85%. Still, nobody noticed. 100 years later, Septimius Severus slashed it to 50. The dam had broken. The emperors didn't call this fraud. They had a much classier name for fraud committed by law. They called it minting currency. By the time the 3rd century crisis hit, Rome ran through 50 emperors. In 50 years, every new ruler had to bribe the soldiers to buy their loyalty. To pay them, you had to mint coins. To mint coins, you had to cut the silver even more. The doomsday countdown had started. 253 AD, silver content 36%. 260 AD, down to 20. And 265 AD, the most fraudulent coin in human history, hit the streets. Inside was just 0.5% silver, practically worthless copper, and yet the emperor stood there with a straight face and said, "This coin is worth 2 denarii. The result? Total catastrophe. In just 30 years, prices in Rome spiked 1000%. Picture this: the loaf of bread you used to buy with 1 denarius now costs you a sack of 100. Farmers stopped sending grain to the cities because they couldn't sell it without losing money. Famine started, trade collapsed, merchants refused to coin. A global economy that had run for 200 years collapsed in just 3 decades. Into primitive barter, Rome went back to the Iron Age. Diocletian came in, tried to freeze prices, minted new coins. Nothing worked. You know why? Because the trust was already shattered. Once an empire deceives its own people with its own money, those people will never believe in that money again. You can't undo 165 years of lying in a single afternoon. In history class, they told you Rome fell in 410 AD when the Visigoths sacked it with swords. No. The swords were just a burial ceremony. Rome had actually died in 265 AD, the day the last grain of silver was scraped out of its coin. 5 empires, one shining poison. Now, we go back to the first minute of this video. Rome, Spain, the Ottomans, the Ming, Byzantium, all of them walked into the same trap. Remember who I said was next? America. 2 years ago, to keep its massive tech industry running, America made a cost-driven decision, exactly like the Romans did. It started cutting its own silver, changing its own gold standard. You already know where the trillions printed out of thin air, the inflation, the swelling prices, are all going to lead. Today, the global semiconductor market is worth $688 billion. Half of that is in America's hands, but that whole industry depends on something sinister. Picture this. In a single year, 231 million ounces of silver got crammed into electronic chips, and those much hyped AI servers, they suck 3 times more silver than the older ones, and that hunger is growing every single day. Same greed, same desperation, the exact same fatal pattern, running for the 1700th year in a row. The phone in your pocket right now, the chip inside it, the wire inside that chip, all silver, same game, third act. So when this collapse arrives at your door, will you be able to protect your own wealth? If you want to learn the hidden rules of history and how to make your finances bulletproof, tap the video on your screen now, because there, I'm telling you about the digital gold of the new world, the one that won't fall. See you there.